Recently, we spoke about Jenna Ortega because there's this clip going around of a woman telling her that she's Latina enough, because apparently that's been up for debates. Now she's back in the news in talking about women leading popular franchises and women having their own characters written for them. I'll show you this clip.
No, you know what I would say about that specifically as well? I love that there's a lot more female leads nowadays. I think that's so special, but we should have our own. I don't like it when it's like a spin-off. Like, I don't want to see like Jamie Bond, I want to see just like another badass. So yeah, something like that, definitely. No,
Now I didn't think this was going to spark much controversy, but apparently people are going back and forth about this. I think Jenna Ortega is definitely onto something. What we're doing now with like the female lead and the girl bossification of Hollywood is we're taking masculine figures, masculine stories, and we're saying this is a male-dominated area. We're gonna swap out, you know, some male characters and throw in some female ones, or we're gonna like girl bossify something that is pretty masculine, or we're going to attribute these very masculine traits to female characters, and it doesn't come off very genuine. And when she's talking about women leading their own franchises and that being a wonderful thing, yeah, that's cool. But if you want a female character and you want to write a complex story for women, do it. Like, write a complex story for women. Don't just swap out a male character and think that you've done something for women. And in a lot of ways, when this happens, it really does miss the mark, because not only did you take something beloved and switch it out for a woman and do it in a lackluster way, which doesn't land with the audience, you've also sort of reinforced this idea that women shouldn't have their own stories, that you just need to take something that's already been created and throw in a feminine character, and somehow that makes it made for a female audience. And that's not right. And with the modern day feminist mindset and ideology, a lot of it is just, how can women be subpar men? How can we take on these masculine traits and just put them within a female life? And it doesn't necessarily work, because it doesn't mesh well with our own innate traits and what makes us feminine. And I think the very same thing can be said for when Hollywood makes like a girl bossified film. You see what they're trying to do. You see that they think this is empowering for women, but something about it just doesn't land. It doesn't connect to our femininity, and it doesn't feel empowering. It feels like pandering. It feels like a cheap shot at creating something that women may want to watch, and then it doesn't exactly work. You know, they're doing it with what? Doctor Who, Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones is now, you know, like the little female character has now been interwoven into the story. And Taylor and I actually went to the theaters to watch that version of Indiana Jones, and I gotta be honest, it just didn't hit. It didn't hit. And maybe it's because we really need to sit down in a room and think about what good female characters look like. And they've been done before. So look at what's been done before, look at what is yet to be done, and think about how femininity can show up in, a major franchise and make it complex and feminine. And she can also be like a girl boss, for lack of a better word, and be really powerful. But you can do that in a way that lands with the audience. And I think that's what Jenna Ortega was trying to say. You know, I'm all fine with seeing a female lead in a film, and she has been a female lead many a time in film and in entertainment, but just do so in a way that's actually unique, and not just taking something like James Bond and making it Jamie Bond, which is what many are calling for. This seems to be what Hollywood is in right now, is not creating new things, but taking old stories and saying, like, what is the identity politics thing we can switch about this story to make it seem better? You know, with Star Wars, The Acolyte, they took Star Wars IP and they're like, well, how can I girl bossify this and make it gay and add people of color and do the diversity, equity, and inclusion thing, but just steal this story, or at least the parts of the story that I'm comfortable with putting on screen. And we watched it and it didn't hit. And it didn't get renewed for a second season. And it's, I think, largely because people can feel these things, whether or not they know exactly why they're feeling it or not. You feel it, and you can see that it's happening. So Jenna Ortega is onto something.
What's amazing to me, like you said, is that this is something that Hollywood knew how to do once upon a time. We've seen it with characters. I see a lot of y'all saying in the chat, people like Ripley from the Alien franchise, Sarah Connor from the Terminator franchise. Personal favorite of mine is Scully from the X-Files, which was a hugely popular show for its time. And she was like this badass doctor slash FBI agent investigator, but still very much feminine. One of the main story arcs in that show is her dealing with her desire to be a mother and the possibility of that not happening and all this stuff. But she's not any less of a badass. There's a particular even like strength that can only manifest itself in that sort of feminine domain that you get to experience. And I think because of that, it feels real, and men and women can relate to that. I'm reminded of, we reacted to Elle Fanning talking about her role as a Disney princess and how she said it's unfortunate that there's this sort of perception that modern princesses need to be understood to be these sort of girl bossified characters. And she talked about how there's actual strength in traditional femininity, and talked about her mother being inspired by her mother, who was a very feminine woman who found fulfillment in just being a mother and focusing on her family, and said that there's an amazing dignity and strength in that. And that's of course not for everyone. It's not to say you have to box every female character into motherhood and those types of roles. It's just to say that merely by making females act in traditionally masculine ways, oddly, that in and of itself reinforces the stereotype that men are the heroes, that men are the strong ones, and in that you also erase the actual feminine heroes that we get to enjoy. As a fan of Lord of the Rings, I think of a character like Eowyn, who's very much a badass, very strong, but also very feminine, and you just don't see that as much anymore. And I think that's really unfortunate. Even as a guy saying that, I lament the loss of that in modern cinema.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, she's been on a roll and talking about this and other things that are happening in cinema as well. And I think it's coupled together because she spoke recently about political correctness with this quote saying, "The business that we work in is so touchy-feely. Everybody wants to be politically correct, but I feel like in doing that, we lose a lot of our humanity and integrity because it lacks honesty." And that's so true. The world is not politically correct. People are not politically correct. And we will sacrifice a lot of those natural tendencies that we have that should play out in our media and entertainment in the name of humanity and injecting humanity and, you know, equity and inclusion and tolerance into films. But what they actually do is make things intolerable. It's intolerant. It lacks real humanity because humanity is not always meant to be perfect and pristine and inoffensive. It's actually more often than not pristine. It is offensive. It does trigger you. It does shock you. So if you're creating films with this sort of idyllic utopian ideal that all women are girl bosses who have a perfect balance of, you know, masculinity within them and can do everything that men can do, or all our films need to be politically correct and we can't offend people, or we trigger warn for this and that, what you get is this sort of sanitized experience that no longer allows you to escape into the art that you're watching. And, you know, Jenna's onto that when she's talking about creating unique female stories, and when she's talking about political correctness maybe needing to be put on the back burner in the films that she's creating. And she's becoming a boss in Hollywood, so she's up there, she's paving her way. Maybe she'll start creating, and I would love to see what comes out of her mind, because she does seem to be, you know, super interested in this stuff, not only the modern day film, but studying the history of film. And if it's coupled with good ideology about political correctness and how to truly write feminine characters, I'd be so interested to see what she comes up with.